Welcome to the Finding Slope Notes. Today we're going to review slope. I know that you were in class for a little bit of slope when we began. However, it's been a couple weeks, so I would like to go back over slope with you and practice some problems with you, and then I will send you a check your understanding to complete. So the first thing here, you have these notes. I've emailed them to you, so if you have them, you will hopefully have a copy printed and you can fill in the blanks as I go through these. So first thing first, let's look at the definition of slope and let's look at the fill in the blank. So it says that slope is the rate of change. So rate of change between 2 points on a line. 2 points on a line. So it's a rate of change between 2 points on a line. You at least need to have 2 points. You could have more, but we just need 2 points on a line and we can figure out what slope is. Another way to look at slope is the definition over here. Slope is also the steepness of a line. So how steep it is, and what we mean by that is how quickly or slowly it grows. So how quickly or slowly it grows. And what I mean by the it part is the line. The other, so slope is the steepness of the line, but if you look here on the other side of this hill, we have a skier who is going downhill, and slope can also show a decrease. So slope can increase and slope can decrease. Just like the steepness can increase and decrease. Very good. So moving on to the next box. To find the slope of a line, you will find the ratio. And another word for that would be a fraction. We do want you to leave these in fraction form and not turn them into a decimal. And the fraction consists of change in y, which a lot of students remember this. This is your rise to the change in x, which is run. The next box over, slope equals change in y over change in x. So you'll probably hear this a little bit over time, that slope is the change in y or the change in x. We do like to get students familiar with this delta sign, which is this triangle. Sometimes you might see that in math. If you see that symbol just means change. So the delta equals change. So that delta sign, that triangle, it equals change. Or if we're looking at a graph, this would be your rise over run. Give you a couple minutes to fill that in, and then we're going to look at the graph that we have here. Okay, so we have this graph here. As you can see, it's in blue. And the first thing I want to go over, just to remind you, is that when we read a graph, we read the graph, all graphs, from left to right. So we always find the farthest left point and we start there. We never start all the way to the right and go left. We always go left to right. So when we have a graph, and we just went over right here, when we use a graph, we could use rise over run. So to identify rise, change my pencil color. So when we identify rise, we're going to start at that first dot and we're going to count up. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is our rise. And our run is how many squares do we run to the right. So I'm going to go over 1. So our slope would be rise, which we said was 4, over the run, which is 1. So that's rise over run, that's your slope. We always write it as a fraction. However, in this case, this fraction can be reduced to just 4, and we will ask you to simplify your fractions into their simplest form. So sometimes you may get a whole number like 4, or you could get a fraction just in a simplified term. So the takeaway here from this is that slope equals a fraction. Slope does not equal, oops, I made that wrong. Hold on. Let me go back. Slope does not equal a coordinate point. So I'm going to write that here. It's not a coordinate point. So you wouldn't write this, you would not write this like 4 comma 1. We wouldn't write it as a coordinate point. That's a big no-no. So don't do that. You always write it as a fraction. Go ahead and erase that out of the way. If I'm going too fast, just pause your video so you can get the stuff written down, and then just start the video back. The next section that we're going to look at are the types of slopes that you will see. So as a reminder, when we are reading graphs, we read them from left to right. So the first type of a slope we will see is something called a positive slope. So if we read it from left to right, we can see that this graph is going uphill. This is a positive slope. Our next line would be a negative. Same thing, if we read it from left to right, this looks like it is going downhill. So positive slope, negative slope. We'll have a slope with 0. And I want to show you that this one would look like this. This line right here has a slope of 0. And it has a slope of 0 because it has no rise. Just realize that's really close together. It has no rise over lots of run, right? So what that would look like if we were to write it, we know that if we look back, our slope is, I don't want to do that. Slope is change in y over change in x. So it's our rise over our run. So we have no rise, but we have a lot of run because this line is going left and right. So what that means in our slope, it means that our slope would, the number that we would write as a fraction could be 0 over 5. And if we simplify 0 over 5, our slope would be 0. And if we look at undefined, undefined will be a vertical line going up and down. Okay, this one will have lots of run and it will have no rise. So for this one, you might end up with something that looks like this. And we can't have a number over 0. If you were to put 5 over 0 in your calculator, it would give you the answer undefined. So if you ever see a vertical line like this, the slope is undefined because we can't have zeros in the denominator. So we have a slope of undefined, we have a slope of 0, which are our horizontal lines where there's no rise but there's lots of run. So the slope equals 0. We have negative slopes, which would indicate a downhill movement, and then we have a positive upward slope. All right. The next section here, what I would like for you to do, well, what we're going to do together is we're going to go through these 4 together, and then we'll go through 5 together, and then that will be the end of your notes. And then I would like for you to try 1, 2, 3, 4, I want you to try 1 through 8 and try 9 and send me your answers to this, and then I will check them. But before you do that, let's do our example problems. So we know that slope is rise over run. So remember, we read our graphs from left to right. So I'm going to just highlight my points there. I'm going to start at my first point, and I'm going to rise up 1, and I'm going to run over 2. So my slope for this one would be 1 over 2. I went up 1 and over to the right 2. When I look at graph 2, we have this point and this point. I already know that this slope is going downhill, so I know that it will be a negative slope. So I'm going to start all the way here to the left, and I'm going to, I know typically when we do rise, we're rising, but in this case, because it's negative, we're going to count down. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to run 1, 2, 3, 4. So our rise, let me switch pens because that's not a nice color to read. We'll have 5, and we know that it's negative because we went down 5, and our run was 4. So our slope for this negative graph is 5 over 4. Okay, now we get to our next graph. We have 2 dots, and we know that it's a vertical line, so we're going to have lots of run but no rise. So for this one will be undefined. Moving on to number 4. Number 4, we have our 2 dots, and I can already tell by looking at it when I read it left to right, it's a downhill. So downhill means negative. I'm going to start at my first point, and I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to run 1, 2. So my rise was -6 and my run was 2. This one I can simplify. So -6 divided by 2 gives me -3. So I have a slope of -3 for graph number 4. If you want to pause the video and go down and do numbers 1 through 8, go ahead and do that. And then you can start the video over again and listen to my explanation of number 5, and then you can do number 9. So today you learned to look at a graph and use rise over run. This next problem, number 5, is going to be asking you to do a couple things. So the first one it asks you to do is graph the data. So the table shows your earnings for babysitting, and the hours is your x-axis, and dollars earned is your y-axis. So that means that hours, whoops, I don't want to use that one. Hours is our x-axis, and dollars earned is our y. So at 0 hours, we earned $0. So my first point will be there. At 2 hours, let's see. First of all, what I should have done before I even started this was count off my boxes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, so each dot could be 1 hour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So for this one, we're going to have to count by fives. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So we're going to go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. And then our hours are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we've already plotted 0, 0. So at 2 hours, we earn $10. So I'm going to go to 2 hours and go up to 10. At 4 hours, we earn $20. So I'm going to go to 4 up to 20. At 6 hours, we earned 30. So I'm going to go over to 6 and up to 30. At 8 hours, we earned $40. So I'm going to go up to the chart, go over 8, up 40. And lastly, at 10 hours worked, we earned $50. All the way up here. Now, the next thing that we're asking you to do is to interpret this, well, to tell me what the slope is. So you can determine slope by doing rise over run, which is what we just learned. I'm going to actually show you 2 ways. So the first way is to choose 2 points. So I'm going to choose just the first point and the second point here. And I'm going to do my rise over run. So if I start here and I go up 2, over 2. I can do the same, up 2, over 2. So my slope is 2 over 2, which equals 1. That would be our slope. Another way that you can figure out slope if you don't want to use a graph is that you can take your table here and you can make an XY table. And I think you were in class when we did some of this. So we can take our XY table and we can plot our points. So our first point was 0, 0. Our second point was 210. Our third point was 420. I'm not going to do all of them because I know that we only need 2 sets of points. So I'm going to use these first 2 and I'm going to subtract down. So if I subtract 0 minus 2, I end up with negative 2. And if I subtract 0 minus 10, I end up with negative 10. Now, negative 10 over negative 2 is my slope, and when I simplify that, I get 5. Now this, if you see, doesn't match that right there. And the reason why it doesn't match that is because when I did my slope, I counted by 1s here when I really should have been counting by 5s because that's what my chart was. So I should have went 5, 10, and then over 2. So then that would have given me the slope of 5. So this is not correct, right? So that's the lesson learned in this, is that we have to make sure we pay attention to how we are labeling our graph, how things are being, what our y-axis is going up by. So when we interpret this graph, what we mean by that is now we interpret the information. So you could look at it and say, every 2 hours, I made $10. Which then ultimately would mean I make $5 per hour, which so happens matches your slope that you have here. So every hour worked, I make $5 babysitting. Okay, that is it for this lesson on slope. What I would like for you to do is to go through and do numbers 1 through 8. Write down what the slope is for each of those graphs, and then give number 9 a try. Again, if you would rather do the XY table instead of graphing the points like we did up here, I don't mind if you want to practice the XY table. So just remember, when you do that, You just take your 2 points like so and subtract down, and that will help you get your slope. As always, if you have any questions at all, please send me an email.